November 2025 quality of life update. So we took a break from paid DLCs to work on this free update that contains new Critomorphs. Pog. We love new Critomorphs, so we're always talking about that. A bioprinter story trait. This is interesting. This reminds me of that mod where they added printer pod inks. Anyone ever play that mod? Where it lets you customize what you can print in the pod? Buildings, performance improvements, cosmetic blueprints, and more. Okay. There's 3 new Critomorphs. The Husky Moo. Okay. A gassy moo morph that produces biodiesel. Probably not going to be that impactful because we rarely find gassy moos anyways. And again, gassy moos I think are a critter that are actually strong, but you just don't find them until too late. But late game content, that's fine. DLC specific Blum Lum. Does it look like Jeff Goldblum? Is that the pun here? I doubt it. They move in herds. Jurassic Park references. Produces algae. Okay, that's actually interesting. A renewable source of algae in the prehistoric planet pack. That's interesting. Yet another source of oxygen, so you don't necessarily have to have electrolyzers. I mean, obviously they eat plants that eat water, right? So you're still converting water into oxygen, technically. This is definitely going to be interesting and probably worth a look at. The Shatterflocks can be shorn for glass. Oh, so a critter that will actually give you glass. That's interesting, because what I've been talking about for a while is I want things in the games that consume glass, because there's no reason to ever just make more than like a few tons of glass with solar panels at the moment. It's weird that they've added a critter that produces glass. Maybe they're going to add something that does consume glass, and that's why this becomes relevant. Because running a glass forge isn't that much of a pain. I can't really see that many cases you'd actually want a Shatterflocks. I mean, I guess you could crush the glass into sand, but that seems kind of bad. I don't know. I'll have to think about this one. The new Printerceptor story trait offers on-demand printing of certain items once unlocked and supplied with databanks, and printing pod charges. Yeah. This is what I was talking about. Like, you get to customize stuff. Lack of sand did kill my last run. Yeah, I mean, a critter that produces sand isn't bad. I mean, I guess. I don't know. I think I'll have to see what it looks like in the game. I'm sure it's going to look very cute in the game, but regular Floxes are really strong, so might be a bit of a downgrade, to be honest. So, supply it with databanks and printing pod charges, and then you can print certain items. That might be interesting. We've added a new low-tier wood element called plywood, along with a plywood press to manufacture it. For Spaced Out, we made Radbot production easier and tweaked how you can mine space POIs. Resources are now mined first with a drill cone and then gathered by rockets with a cargo module. Oh, okay. Each point of interest starts with some free-floating resource and databanks that can be collected by cargo modules. That's really interesting. So this gives you a reason to actually look at the star map before you can make drill cones. For the space POIs. That's actually very interesting. You just get like a one-time deposit of stuff to harvest. That sounds really good, actually. That sounds like a very good change. Spent a lot of time working behind the scenes tools and to make and measure performance improvements. This includes rebuilding our profiler tool and setting up a new automated testing system. Okay, nice. Large portions of pathfinding computation have been made asynchronous, leading to faster overall performance and significant improvements to jet suits. That's interesting. There are over 100 new blueprints. Okay, yep. Great. Looking forward to seeing those, but I won't spoil them now. Small paid collection of cosmetic skins soon. That's nice. So you get all the free ones, and then you have the option of spending money on more. That's fine. For people who want to do that, that's fine. I mean, Clay was trying to figure out what to do with cosmetics for a while. We originally thought that all of them were going to be paid, and now it looks like most of them are free, but some of them are paid, which feels completely fair. It'll be in public testing for about 3 weeks. Okay, that's interesting. So, sort of towards the end of November is when we'll see this go live. That's interesting. Okay, let's read the detailed patch notes now. I'm sure you've all been reading this in advance anyways. So add a Printerceptor story trait. By default, only 5 story traits are selected to spawn a new world. The Printerceptor will always be included in that default selection. You may select more than 5, but it might make certain seeds fail. Okay, that makes sense. Yeah. Added banquet hall room type. Is this like a greater hall? That's interesting because the Great Hall already provides a huge amount of morale for the actual effort you have to put in. Maybe they're going to nerf the Great Hall, and then the Banquet Hall has the same morale as the current Great Hall. That might make sense. It requires an ornament to be displayed on a pedestal or display shelf. Okay. Requires a communal table. Communal table seats up to 3 dupes simultaneously. If a dupe dines with friends, they receive a +1 morale boost. Okay. That's interesting. Probably not going to make a huge difference. Wait. Insulated door! Insulated door that provides the same amount of insulation as insulated tiles when closed. That's huge! That's actually huge. People have wanted that for ages. There's been, like, mods for years about this, because doors are all made of metal and they all conduct heat. That's fantastic. I wonder what that's going to be made out of. Probably just rock, right? Maybe it's a more advanced one and it'll need, like, reed fiber or something, but that's very, very interesting. I think in a lot of cases... So basically, in our designs where we've got vacuum liquid locks, where it's got a little vacuum in the middle to achieve the seal... if we don't actually need to seal the gases completely and we're just looking for the temperature seal, this insulated door can replace that. So that's going to be that's actually going to be really good for just sort of general base design. I don't think it's going to affect a huge amount of like really specific niche builds that much, but this is going to make general base design a lot easier, I think. Nice. The plywood press, which transforms plant husk and resin into plywood. Plant husk, okay. Display shelf to display decorative objects and ornaments. Oh, so it's like a pedestal but on the wall. Okay, fair enough. Looks like the insulated door needs rock and fiber. Okay. Yeah, that makes sense. It should be more advanced than a regular door. That makes sense, I think. Added a biodiesel engine for rockets. That's interesting. That's very interesting. Well, it's not that interesting. But it's mildly interesting. It'll be interesting if it has different properties than the other engines. Nice to see different options. Dupes with the crop tending skill can salvage plant husk when harvesting certain plants in addition to the usual products. Harvesting gas grass produces a large amount of plant husk. Okay, so you just get a small amount of it passively. Okay. And then you need resin to turn it into plywood. So this means farming with a resin source just gives you raw materials for building stuff out of now. That could be interesting for certain starts. Maybe like the Frosty Planet pack as well. Added a new biodiesel producing gassy moo mold called the Husky Moo. That's hilarious. Feeding plant husks to the gassy moo increases its chances of cooling a Husky Moo. Okay. Added plywood. Added door side screen UI to set permissions for rovers, flydos, and biobots. This is another big one. A lot of people complain about these guys because they don't follow door permissions, and then biobots like could ruin gas equilibriums if they go through a door they're not supposed to, or just let something out they're not supposed to, get into trouble. This is a really good change. I'm really happy about that. Because we like using the Biobot builder, but it's mostly because of the door permissions that we don't really use it that much these days. So that's great. There's also a section in that UI for bionic duplicants. Yes! Yes! So now we can stop bionic duplicants only from going into liquidy areas by default. That's a huge improvement. This is looking great. This is actually, if this keeps up, this might be the quality of life update that I think I'm most excited for that's ever been released. These are great changes. All critters now semi-regularly play a happy or sad emote animation to show certain states and effects. That'll be adorable. Great. Added a research module for rockets and spaced out, which collects databanks from space POIs. Databanks are non-renewable. Okay, that's fine. Is this just the research module from like the base game that they're just adding to spaced out? That might be fun. So adding the shatterflocks, which can be sheared for glass. Yeah, what other options are there for renewable sand again? I mean, I guess it's anything that sort of produces rock. Interesting. Added a wicker door, which is an air-permeable door made out of wood. Oh, okay, as an option compared to the pneumatic door. That makes sense. Okay, cool. The Bionic Booster Pack. Bionic Duplicates now have a new skill branch. Yes! I was saying how Bionic Duplicate skills were, like, so, basic. I'm glad they're adding more. Immunity to eye irritation and popped eardrums for improved hardware, and climate control, immunity to chilly and toasty surroundings. Now, this is really interesting because the main reason I think Bionic Dupes are strong at the moment is because you can put them in a suit and the suit lasts forever. And that will still be relevant for scalding and frostbite applications. But these skills actually eliminate a lot of the need for that, as well as the door permissions stopping Bionic Dupes from going to liquid zones now. So this makes Bionic Dupes stronger without sort of getting overtuned with that sort of technology with the exosuits. So I'm pretty happy about that. It means it's probably easier to take them early game and get them in situations like that. So often we take them just to go in carbon dioxide pits, but now this is a situation where if you have like a hydrogen vent right next to your base, you could just let that go and like print a Bionic Dupe, have the immunity to eye irritation and pop eardrums, and just have them go up there and work with all the hydrogen. That could be very good. And again, immunity to chilly and toasty surroundings. These debuffs make a huge difference in the early game to the efficiency of your base because the athletics penalty is so high now. And also, errands keep getting interrupted for heating and cooling tasks with the water cooler and the space heater and so on and so forth. So this gives you another really compelling reason to get Bionic Dupes, because oxygen masks don't prevent that at all. In fact, oxygen masks don't prevent any of these. So this is another excellent change, I think, that really makes Bionic Dupes better. Added a Lum morph to the prehistoric planet pack called the Blum Lum that produces algae instead of peat. Lums will increase their Blum Lum egg chances when in presence of carbon dioxide. Someone's gonna have to send me a screenshot of what these Blum Lums look like. I really just hope they're like wearing like a pair of glasses or something like Jeff Goldblum. Added a Higby monument to the supply closet. Great, okay. And now for the general changes. Mess tables are now public by default. That's nice. Added duplicate starting outfit selection widget to the new game character select menu and printing pod character select menu. Ooh! You can just customize that from the menus. That's very interesting. Control F now opens the build menu's base tab and focuses on the search bar. Okay. Several items have been added to the category that can be displayed in pedestals. Nice. Large rocket modules now use the wide delivery offset, making it easier for duplicates to deliver to their storage. Okay, that's good. Creates a new missiles tech for Meteor Blaster or Blast Shot Maker. Yeah, makes sense. Several buildings that use liquid and animations were updated to show the color of the liquid being used. This is very interesting because we actually have a mod that does this specifically for thermo aquatuners, so I can keep track of that when we're doing coolant loops of different materials, and just in case I ever make like an ethanol freezer loop that I want to switch to nectar later. So hopefully that just rolls out with that feature. That would be fantastic. Wood now provides a plus 50% decor boost, and then the decor of wood buildings has generally been nerfed, so this makes it so that wood is better than plywood for those elements. That makes sense. But that's very interesting because this also means that if plywood could be used as a construction material in these contexts, then you no longer actually need trees to get saunas. And we know from the YouTube video that you could use saunas to delete heat quite easily if you have steel for a gas pump, 50 steel. So this actually opens up that sauna heat deletion early for every start, potentially. Oh, but you have to get the resin. Oh, I've spotted something, but I'll get to that now. Yeah, actually, let's talk about this quickly now. Shinebug eggs now drop some resin when cracked at the egg cracker. So this is clearly what they intend. So if you have shine bugs on your start, then you can make plywood because you'll have plant husks from farming, and then you'll get a little bit of resin that you can use to make a little bit of plywood, which means you can make a sauna even if you're in a start that doesn't have any arbor trees or bonbon trees. And usually, terra starts are exclusive to forest starts, so this should mean you can build a sauna on pretty much every map. That's very interesting. And then, okay, let's go back to critters in a minute, but jet suits. Looks like they're revamping jet suits. Significantly increased jet suit movement speed, increased fuel consumption, and reduced their CO2 output and temperature. This is very interesting because someone brought up to me a while ago that jet suits, obviously the performance thing is why nobody uses them, and because they're so slow, but they actually produce so much carbon dioxide in the current state of the game compared to the petroleum intake. If you recycle all of that carbon dioxide with slicksters, it's positive. So hypothetically, you could just have a dupe going back and forth in a jet suit, or multiple dupes going back and forth in jet suits, and use that to generate free petroleum to run your base if you have enough molten slicksters. Now, I'm not sure how actually practical that would be to set up, but it looks like they just want to stop that from being a thing, which makes sense. But I'm glad that they're making them faster. That seems like a good thing to look at. You once tried jet suit docks in my rocket, it didn't go well. Yeah. Okay, this seems like a sensible change, but we'll have to see how that actually goes. Duplicates in jet suits prioritize flying over walking when both navigation options are available. That's good. Adjusted animations. Okay, that'll be fun to see. Jet suits now require a textile ingredient to fabricate. Reed fiber or feather fiber. That's fine. Makes sense. Jet suits no longer require petroleum to fabricate initially, but must be fueled at a jet suit dock for first use. That makes sense. Jet suits can now be fueled with any combustible liquid, so that means with biodiesel as well, presumably. So that is interesting. Let's see, what else? Jet suits will now show...
Fish.
Oh, hello, Uglavisk.
Killer fish from San Diego. I don't know what I am.
Let me just
but I
update
taste
the stream
really good.
title.
I'm a killer fish. Hello. I'll be your killer fish for the evening. Thank you.
Hope you're doing well, Uglavisk. We're talking about patch notes. There's been a quality of life update that's going to come out on the mainstream in 3 weeks, and there are some banger changes in this. I'll post it in the chat as well. Yeah, here you go. This is like looking to be an absolute banger of an update. They're adding insulated doors. Yeah, so jet suits are getting revamped as well, so they're much faster, and their performance impact is much lower. So I'm really curious to see this, and I'm glad they fixed this. Let's get back to critters, but before we do, let's have a look at the game-specific channel. Oh my god, hold on. Here's a Blum Blum. Wow, it's got a little eyes shut thing, and it's got like a sail. That's cool. Why is it called a Blum Blum though? I'm disappointed. I want the Jeff Goldblum. Someone needs to make that a mod. Right. Okay. Yeah. Continuing with critters. Hello, Philfit. Philfit, hope you're doing well. Yes, insulated doors. Hype. So shine bug eggs drop some resin. This is good. But you have to crack them specifically at the egg crackers. So this means that we're not just going to end up with shine bug reactors producing a stupid amount of resin, which is probably sensible from a game balance point of view. Items dropped by a critter upon death now spawn at the critter's body temperature. That makes sense. Drekos now have 90% scale growth upon growing up. Drekos got nerfed! Hitler is dead! So obviously, with Dreco ranches, you could literally just have the babies grow up, immediately shear them in a non-hydrogen atmosphere, and then just immediately drown them. And we've done that for ages. We had a build that we did on the YouTube channel where we do that specifically to get loads of reed fiber. So now that won't actually work because you'll need to leave them in a hydrogen room for a small period of time. So now this means you're not going to get massive amounts of reed fiber from the excess Drekos. You're only going to get it from the breeder Drekos. Much like they realized this with Mammoths, which is why Mammoths don't start with full fur either. So this is probably a necessary change. So that's fine, but I'm going to be sad about it temporarily. That being said, on Sour Gas or Bust, we're going to have a huge Dreco population in the end anyways. I guess it's mostly going to be glossy Drekos, though. Oh, I don't know. We'll see. It's probably a well-justified nerf. Drekos are among the best critters in the game. They outclass Rexes by a ton, so I'm glad that this is perhaps a reason to go for Rexes, possibly? I don't know. It's less of a reason not to go for Rexes. Crowding will be calculated based on space allocated to each individual critter, rather than assuming all critters are allocated the same amount of space. This is absolutely gigantic. I can't overemphasize how important this is. Because I basically held off looking at most of the Prehistoric Planet Pack content for Sandbox Showcase because I knew they weren't going to make it. So a Mimilet was going to take up the same amount of space. A Mimica was going to take up the same amount of space as a Lum in a ranch. Now it actually makes sense to mix critters in ranches with this change, whereas before it just made zero sense. Apart from very space-efficient ranches. So I'm completely relieved that this is coming in the update following the DLC, because if it didn't, I'd have had some words. So that's absolutely fantastic. Aquatic critters will now only consider other aquatic critters and eggs are in the same pool as them when determining their crowded status. That probably makes sense. The crowded modifier is now relative to the critter's personal space requirement. Larger critters will generally suffer a lower happiness penalty than smaller critters when they inhabit the same room. Okay, that's interesting. We'll have to see how that actually works out. That's very interesting. The tooltips for the crowded status now specify how many members of each critter are present and how much space each of them occupies. Good. Flopping status for fish now displays in red font with an exclamation mark. Fantastic. Rooms. Remove the light source requirement from the laboratory. This makes sense. I think it's mostly just because you could have, like, lamps in a room, and if they weren't plugged in, it wouldn't count as a laboratory. Like, they had to actually be active. Or at least powered, even if they weren't actually being used, if they were disabled by automation. Kind of unnecessary to have a light source, to be honest. One could argue, the laboratory itself is kind of unnecessary because the bonus is so small compared to just having a good researcher. I feel like they should buff the bonus for a laboratory. Maybe. Maybe make it give some morale as well. I don't know. Morale to the dupe doing the research. Some minor buff to justify it, because the studying, the research bonus, yeah, or buff lit workspace. I mean, lit workspace is good for other attributes or other tasks that don't have attribute points behind it, but lab workspace literally only applies to researching. So I think they should just buff lab workspace. Added banquet hall. Reduced mess hall and great hall morale benefit. Yep, this is what we expected. That makes sense, because that was too strong, to be honest. Added an ornament object category. Ornaments are a special class of decor object that will be displayed on a pedestal or display shelf. Includes artifacts and keepsakes. Any rooms that require high decor items now require an ornament, specifically. That's very interesting, because you could actually cheese this with aeropods made of diamond, because they had enough decor just as the base building. So that makes sense. It's more sensible overall, I think. Decor for room requirements. The planter boxes and decor plants no longer count as two separate decor items that contribute to a room's requirements. Interesting. An empty planter box will not count as a decor item. Okay, well this is this is specifically what we were talking about, kind of. I guess it's only planter boxes? Or is this also the hanging ones? The planter box contains a healthy decor plant. This combination will count as one decor item. If the planter pot becomes non-operational, or the plant wilts, it will not count as a decor item. That's very interesting. The ornament requirement is the bigger Great Hall nerf, if you ask me. That's also true. Yeah, that's actually very true, because ornaments are kind of hard to come by. And it also means that the amount of, like, you can't have loads and loads of Great Halls in your colony unless you go to space and find loads and loads of artifacts. So, yeah, as you say, Carrie, actually, it gives more of a reason for artifacts to exist in the game, which is very good, I think, because, again, it's another reason to go out into space and do all of that stuff. Your coffee cup collection. They need to make the coffee cups be different colors. That's something I need to do. I hope that shows up in here somewhere. Artables will not count as decor building until they've been completed. That, again, probably makes sense. This makes decorators better. Pedestals and display shelves will not be considered decor buildings if they lose their foundation or are not displaying an item. This is also good. People were definitely cheesing this. Pedestals now have a negative status item, no object display when they're not displaying an item. Yep. Incomplete artwork status is now red instead of grey. That makes sense. Okay. Sandbox. It is now possible to directly spawn all solid materials, bottled liquids, and gas canisters from the sandbox spawner tool. That's interesting. I'm trying to think of if there's a specific reason for me to do this. I guess actually we often spawn tiles and have the dupes dig them up, but now we can just spawn the material. That's very interesting. If you start a game in the beta test branch, can it still work when launched? Hello, Thork. So I know that if you start a game in the beta test branch and you try and revert it back to the normal game, then it won't load. Any save loaded in the beta test branch can't be loaded in the regular game again until it updates. So if you're going to look at this stuff, look at it in a new save for sure. It might be that it works when they update the game to match, but I don't know. I wouldn't assume so. When placing a building in sandbox mode, any plants covered by the building will now be automatically uprooted. That's nice. Sandbox tool destroy tool now deletes falling liquid droplets. That's useful because we've had that come up a few times. Looks like a potted plant is still good enough for the Great Hall. They must have nerfed the remove the high value decor requirement. Okay. Oh, okay then. Fair enough. We'll have to look at that more thoroughly when it comes out. I don't generally look at the beta testing just because of mods and things I want to keep. And also, I don't want to invest in something too much and find it changes in a couple of weeks. Stored items. Okay, let's have a look at... Okay, UI stuff. We'll have a look at this quickly. I don't think this makes a huge difference. It's just lots of nice little things. I guess we'll see most of this when we actually play it in a couple of weeks' time. Improved search in the build menu, that's always nice. Small adjustments to the supply closet layout for better outfit previews. Nice, nice. Hello, gentlemen, please. Patch notes. It's patch notes day. There's an update coming out in 3 weeks. It's on beta now. So have a look. Have a look. A Buddy Bud is good enough for a Great Hall now. Scale growth amounts shown in Critters UI are now named according to the sheared product. Okay, that makes sense. Yes. Yes, because feathers aren't scales, mammoth fur isn't scales. I'm really glad they did this because that was actually really annoying me specifically. Made refinements to the research screen visuals. Okay. Critter Fluxomatic story trait now more clearly communicates that scanning was successful, even if the scan critter was one that has no morphs, and or the scan result doesn't contain new information about that species. That's fine. Database entry for organics, database entry for slippery materials. Okay, this is interesting. I like that. Elements, properties, database category now has custom icons. Plant seeds, which are now also food ingredients, now linked to the entry about the ingredient rather than the entry of the plant. That's fair enough. Plant database entries now have a subsection for their seeds. Okay. Plant seeds that could be transformed into foods no longer have database entries in the food category. Okay. Sublimators or off gases now illustrate their transition in the database entry. Good. Brachian production in the gassy mood database now shows the milking station to make it consistent with how we show shared products. Good. Database entries that describe systems now contain links to relevant tutorials and videos. This is great. I like it. Microchips, boosters, and databanks have been moved into a new tech components category in the database. Okay. Spaced out only changes. Okay, this is interesting. Lots of DLC specific changes. I'm getting the hiccups. Ground-based telescopes now produce a small number of databanks when revealing star map hexes. Okay, that's nice. I like that. Improved rocket interior background visuals while traveling through space. Star map tiles now referred to as hexes consistently throughout the game. Good. Star map changes. Oh, wow. Actually, there's a lot of stuff changing here. Added an organic mass field space POI near the start for new saves only. This modifies all space POI positioning in seeds. So you're guaranteed to start with an organic mass near you. So that's algae, right? That is interesting. So, combined with the fact that there's free floating resources, this means if you run out of algae on your main planet, there is an emergency stash of algae in in the environment. That's very interesting. Pin. Yes, I will pin that. Good idea. Yeah. I'll unpin it at the end of the stream. I forgot that was even a function. Thank you, Uglavis. Very helpful. Yeah, I want to see what happens with the blumlums. I mean, maybe pit plant some Ovagro vines and then get the blumlums just producing oxygen for free. That does sound good. Ooh! Added abyssalite and granite to the rocky asteroid field space POI. No longer produces copper ore. Lads, this means abyssalite is now a renewable resource if you have a drill cone. So, all these times, you've made fun of me for geotuning a hydrogen or natural gas vent and saying, but Rezia, you could have melted it into tungsten later on. Well, now you don't have to worry because there is abyssalite to melt into tungsten later on. Yeah, I'm loving these changes. These are all actually making space, just dipping your toes into space, more rewarding, which I think is really good. Looks like you can see what artifact you get from space POIs now. Good. Added molten lead to the metallic asteroid field space POI. Okay, so this means that lead is now also a renewable resource. This is great because otherwise, if you're making lead suits, you can only make a finite amount of lead suits based on your oil biome in your starting asteroid. And considering on Sargasso Bust we don't have lead because we don't have an oil biome. That meant on that save, we just we don't have access to lead suits at all. So this is a good change. Some lead would be appreciated. Resources, Clay probably tired of us complaining about things not being renewable. True. I think Clay have actually responded to a lot of very specific grievances the ONI's community has had with this. This is why I'm so excited about this update. Like, this is a lot of stuff people have been asking for ages. Very minor things, but like really good fixes. Resources mined using a drill cone will now be stored as free-floating harvestable resources. Yes, we discussed this. So now you can just take your rocket up and there's a little bit waiting for you at the start. And some databanks. 50 databanks each. That's a lot of databanks. Are they going to make technologies more expensive? Because this combined with getting extra databanks from earlier. Like... Oh, what did you get databanks from? It said something. Sorry, this is gonna take, like, longer than I thought it was going to. Oh, you can use them for the printing pod. Oh, okay, that makes sense why they've added some. Yeah, okay. Yeah, for the new story trait. Okay. Minor art changes to some space POIs, fine. When a rocket is set to do a round trip, the rocket will begin its return flight when it reaches its destination and finds no resource, or it cannot mine a space POI present. Rockets with cargo modules that can gather from star map hexes will now attempt to gather a bit of each resource at the same time, instead of harvesting the entirety of one before moving to gather on the next one. Fair enough. I guess they're reducing how much plastic spaced out needs to research. Yeah, it looks like it. Added new UI side screens representing rocket cargo modules and resource gathering. This can be viewed by selecting rockets on a map. Drill cone description now specifies it only frees up the space resources and that a cargo bay or other transportation module is necessary for gathering them. Yep. All space artifacts now mention the need for an artifact transport module. Yep. Okay. And links to the database. That's good. All space POIs that can be mined for resources will start with 10% extra resources already floating and available nearby. So 10% of the capacity of the POI. That's quite a lot. That's probably at least a couple of tons of like each material. That's good. Rad bolts. Move rad bolt joint plate to an earlier tech tier. Okay, this is one that I specifically am really pleased about because we've had cases where we tried to set up our Wheezeworts with a joint plate to stop dupes from coming in, etc., to keep the hydrogen in the Wheezewort room. And we had to research the radiation tech to actually do that at all. So I'm glad that we don't have to do that now. That's just me. Oh, this is a big one. Radbolt generators now only consume electricity, proportional to current Radbolt production for values less than 480 watts. 400 Radbolts per cycle. Higher values will continue to only require 480 watts. So this means that radbolt generators are now not going to be a huge power drain for inefficient radiation sources. The only inefficiency now is going to be time taken to get the radbolts. Because before, you would just suck so much power out of small radiation sources it was never worth doing. That's very interesting. This means you could probably just set one up in space, and it would very slowly get radbolts for you. That's nice. I mean, that's not very efficient time-wise, but it is nice that you're not completely shafted for doing that now. Radbolts stored in radbolt chambers or radbolt generators now decay significantly more slowly when the building loses power. Okay. Or is this a problem for anyone? Cargo bay, blah, blah, blah. Have we moved to solid transport? Okay. Space Roller database contains information about space mining. That's good. UI changes. Tooltip now includes information about the rocket's maximum range and its potential maximum range. Okay, that's good. There's no spoiler here. There's no hidden text for AI. Don't worry. Frosty Planet Pack. Base decor value of wood and wood block reduced to accommodate a new decor boost given by the building with wood material. That makes sense. Prehistoric Planet Pack. The Mimlet's description now calls it a seed of a mimica bud instead of a fruit. Okay. Is it a fruit or a vegetable? Pollinator critters now have a going to pollinate status when they're on their way to tend a plant. That's good. That'll include grubs. The notification that pops up when Demolio delivers the keepsake item that says artifact found. Okay. Minor improvements to Jawbone navigation. Okay, sure. I'm not sure about all these bugs. I don't think there's anything specifically here that is relevant to me. Have they fixed the sponge from the mopping animation? That would be interesting. Yeah, I'm really glad they're making... this seems like a really good balance patch, actually. I think they've actually figured out a lot of stuff that we've been talking about. That's good. Fixed duplicates playing the incorrect idle animation in a jet suit. Okay. This is great because we've had this happen occasionally when we've been doing stuff, so I'm really happy. I don't think there's anything overly interesting in here. I'm glad they're still tweaking the database. Remove some deprecated recipes. No. The draw code UI no longer animates when the draw code supply is exhausted. Okay. I think this is all fairly minor stuff. Fixed jawbone flopping into walls. Nice. Sweat corn is now consistently referred to as a vegetable. Amazing. The critter sensor now counts knit larvae. That's interesting that that wasn't a thing, but I guess it never really came up. Then got a load of performance updates. So looks like jet suits are going to be better, hopefully. Generally, systems optimized. Smoother frame rate. Optimized small graphs. Improved performance of objects being deleted. Fixed performance issue. Fixed a performance issue where opening various screens would cause a performance impact even when closed. This is huge. Yeah, people were talking about this. Like, opening the consumables window would just permanently reduce the performance impact for the rest of, like, your time loaded into the game. Really glad they fixed that. Reduce performance hitch when opening the consumable screen for the first time in the play session. Yep, that's also true. Improved performance of sandbox stuff. Mine optimization to solar panels and gobfish. That's weird. Please tell me this hasn't broken gobfish. I'm not going to worry too much about the modding stuff, and I'm not going to worry too much about the supply closet. But yeah, that's it. I'm ecstatic about these changes. There's some really, really big ones in here. The insulated door is going to make a huge difference to a lot of people. I know that. Great Halls being rebalanced is probably necessary. I like that they're making wood generally available for building saunas and hot tubs. Regardless of where you are, it's just going to be shitty wood. That's fine. I think I'm very excited about the Lum variant. We'll have to see what the Phlox variant and the Moo variant are like, but I think the Lum variant is going to be the most impactful. And I'm really happy with the Bardic dupe changes. That's going to make binding loops a lot more appealing early on before you get the exosuits. Okay, well, we're going to leave that for a little bit anyways, because we're just going to finish off our PokeShell experiments that we're doing at the moment. But I hope you've enjoyed that. A little deep dive into the patch notes.